Pat Mayo Hour.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Hour UFC 202 DraftKings picks and preview. I do want to let you know that we're nearing the end of UFC season on the Pat Mayo Hour because full-time football is picking up right now. If you go to facebook.com/thepmetthepme, you will find the entire 2016 Fantasy Football Draft Guide. There's almost 30 shows up there now, so it's everything you need to know if you want to win this season. And if you do win, you want a prize, go to fantasyjocks.com to check out their belts, draft boards, and rings, and all their prizes that you can order for your custom leagues. But we're not here to talk about football. We're here to talk about MMA with Cody Saftik, who, after, well, I wouldn't say it was a losing week in terms of cash games. It would be 3 weeks ago now. I won some, I lost some. They weren't definitive winners. Although you texted me like a cash team 2 weeks ago. That was a winner.
That was a good one.
That was a good one.
Yeah. I had some guy that gave me heat. He's like, this is the worst GPP team I ever played.
The GPP team wasn't great.
Well, I had to go for it. You know? Sometimes you had to make some risks. But I really didn't care that he was upset.
Yeah, whatever. He's using lineups for free that he didn't even think about.
He used the cash game.
Yeah, use cash game, win every week, basically.
Yeah.
We're betting around, or you're batting around like 80% now. I'm building up my bankroll for football season through.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed here that you're just going to abandon fighting, but it happens every season.
Happens every day. I have to abandon golf. I have to abandon Bachelor in Paradise. It all goes by the wayside once football starts.
You gave the people your Twitter handle. Now that they know it's THEPME. Guys, Twitter bomb him if you want the show back on, right? I mean, come on.
Who's going to produce it?
Listen, you might get 2 people Twitter bombing you, and it's not going to be a good time.
Right. If we get 2, then maybe I will have to do the show.
Oh, there you go.
Maybe we'll just do 5 minutes a week. You just come in with your lineups, and we'll be good to go. Some quick hits.
Yeah, quick web hits.
Quick web hits. And also released on the audio version, too. Diaz, McGregor, 2. People are excited. I'm somewhat excited. I want to watch this fight, and I never want to watch any of these fights. Is McGregor, last time we talked, McGregor was a lock to win.
Yeah, I did say that.
Didn't win.
I used those exact words, I believe.
I think you did. Now he's a minus 125 favorite. Diaz is even money to bet on him. The DraftKings pricing, however, is a bit more skewed. 9,200 for Diaz, 10-4 for McGregor. That seems overpriced based on the odds. Plus, we know, especially in GPPs, people are going to be on McGregor.
Oh, yeah.
Big time. People like betting on McGregor. People like having him on the team. I would guess he's the most popular guy.
He's definitely the most popular guy. I mean, he kind of transcends the sport, so to speak. So obviously he has a big fan base. But Paul Shaughnessy made a great point. Because of the supreme value on
Diaz?
Nate Diaz, he's probably going to be highly, highly owned. So if you do take McGregor and McGregor goes out there and does what he should have done the first time around, then you're going to be sitting well. Flip side to that, and this is what I decided to do, I just avoided the main event altogether. Actually, I put Diaz in a GPP, which we'll get to, because of the supreme value once again. And it's not even so much that, he's going to go out there and do the exact same thing. There's a lot of question marks that have to be answered in this fight. It's a great fight for a reason. It's got the people hyped up. However, it's not the worst play in the world to just let everybody else have Diaz and McGregor, and then you kind of go another route.
What's the chances this ends in a 5-round decision?
I'm going to say very low.
I was going to say, because if that was the case, then it'd be very smart to avoid it.
Yeah, for sure. But the fact is, I mean, the way McGregor fights, obviously he's a guy that can finish. And we've seen this fight happen already one time around. And yes, Nate Diaz took those shots and was able to take out Conor McGregor in the second round. What if he can't take those shots this time around? It seems like the path of victory for Nate Diaz is do the exact same thing. Take the shots, weather him out, hurt him, and then either knock him out, TKO him, or submit him again. For Conor McGregor, it's how can I hit him with the same shots I was hitting him, but kind of save my energy this time around. Don't blow my load in the first round. Pace myself. Either way, he's not going to be able to pace himself for the 25 minutes because that's a big that's a drastic change. I got tired 6 minutes into my last fight, and now all of a sudden I'm just going to be able to go 25. That seems kind of unlikely. And for Nate Diaz, he has been knocked out before by Josh Thompson. He can get knocked out again. One of these shots has just got to land at the right spot. And listen, they can land, but this is MMA. Some days you can take all the shots in the world. Some days you can't take any of the shots in the world. So it's a dangerous fight, but I would assume it's not going 25 minutes.
Who would you pick to win? I know
I hate to be the guy that flip-flops, but because Diaz is the dog, here's my whole thing. And I said he was a lock, and I meant it. I said he was going to be faster, he's a better striker, he's going to be able to hit Nate Diaz, he's going to dance around him. And he did all those things. What I didn't take into consideration is that he was going to completely gas out after 5 minutes. And it's not even so much the gassing out, it's the fact that Nate Diaz is a savvy veteran, he's been around a long time, and this is going to sound really cliche, but people are always like, it's like, that champion mindset, that champion mentality, that ability
the winner's will to win.
And the reason why they say that is that you have to have that special X factor in you where your nose is broken and you can taste your own blood and your brain's telling you, yo, man, we're probably about to lose. But you're still like, no, I'm going to make it happen. You push through. And not everybody has that quality. Conor McGregor is a great champion. He's, a legendary champion. He'll go down in the history books, win or lose, as one of the better fighters that the UFC's come across in a long time. No doubt about it. But if you're asking me, does he have that X factor? Well, he's never had to prove it. Because all of his fights are generally first, second round knockouts. He finishes guys early. The Chad Mendes fight, he showed some of it, certainly. I'm getting hurt. This guy's hitting me. He's taking me down. But he had a short notice replacement. In that Diaz fight, Diaz took the shots and he weathered them and he went through. And McGregor, he took the shots. And right away, you could just got this sense once the punches started landing that he just wasn't in it anymore. And he was tired and the fight happened short notice and he talked so much stuff. So now he's not doing all this media tour stuff, not as much. And he's got a full camp. And his nutritionist, George Lockhart, has said that he's put on the weight a lot better this time around. So you can't expect him to gas. But from what we saw, it happened. And so this time around, if you're going to give me Diaz as the dog, well then, I saw the fight playing the first time around. McGregor's going to hit him with these shots. He's going to be faster. He's going to be sharper, and it'll put him down. But what I saw is he hit him with those shots. He was faster. He was sharper. The shots did not put him down. So now that I know that, or now that's what I believe, I can't bank on that. He's just going to be able to revitalize his game and go and knock Diaz out. So I guess I would have to lean Diaz, especially because it's dog money. This is a coin flip fight. It's very even. So if you're going to give me money on Nate Diaz,
it's even money. You're not getting money to bet on
sure,
Diaz, but you're not giving up money to bet on Diaz.
And come fight week, I would assume the money's going to come in on Conor McGregor because, as you mentioned, people like Conor McGregor.
Yeah, just wait it out.
But that's the line. I mean, we're here to talk about the actual DK pricing of it. And if you look at DK pricing, 10-4 is not super expensive for Conor McGregor if it was any other Conor McGregor fight because he's going to go out there, he's going to finish the guy. That's what he does. He's a good value play, or not a good value play, but he's a good GPP play, a good cash game play. Only Nate Diaz seems to be the opponent that is his kryptonite, so to speak, a guy that takes those shots and keeps going forward. So 10-4 is a little pricey for McGregor when you look at it that way. Nate Diaz has already finished this guy, and he finished him in pretty spectacular fashion. $9,200. I don't know how they came up with that value.
And DraftKings points don't discriminate. So if Conor McGregor's 10-4, just because someone is a lesser fighter at 10-5, doesn't mean they have an easier path to getting a knockout.
No,
and that's
absolutely
what we want for our cash game lineups.
Absolutely. Listen, I expect to see a better version of Conor McGregor here, but let's not forget, Conor McGregor was the guy training for a 5-round title fight before Nate Diaz stepped in a week out.
Yeah,
so
but how much
we should see a better Nate Diaz.
How much more did Nate Diaz weigh than McGregor? Like, how big is that size discrepancy?
Nate Diaz, his boxing coach Richard Perez says he walks around currently at 200 pounds, right? Conor McGregor, I would have to assume he's walking around at 174, 175 pounds. So yes, there's a 25-pound weight advantage for sure. But that's if you believe that he's 200 pounds, which I think his brother's 200 pounds, but I don't know if Nate Diaz is 200 pounds. I would probably put him somewhere in the 185-pound range. And then once again, it's about 10, 15, 20 pounds, which is significant because these shots that you're hitting guys with that are getting knocked out, all of a sudden he can take these shots. And as I mentioned, he's been knocked out before. Yeah, a head kick. It clocked him right in the head. So can McGregor kick him in the head? Sure. But his head kick is not necessary part of his arsenal. He's not going to go out there and throw roundhouse. He likes to throw spinning stuff. He likes to throw hook kicks. He likes to throw wheel kicks. But it's flashy more than anything, It's not necessarily. I wouldn't bank on he's going to hit him in the head. What I would have to say though is Conor McGregor does have decent leg kicks, which he did not use at all last time around. And because he's so much faster than Nate Diaz, and Nate Diaz is very plodding and flat-footed, it would be a good game plan to kick him in the leg. And I do kind of see it happening that way. But once again, Nate Diaz, he can take that stuff. They're tough guys, Like as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of his kryptonite. His style seems to be the one thing that McGregor can't handle, which is good striking, good jiu-jitsu, good cardio, good chin, and just that ability to march forward through the fire.
So no either side for the
I
cash game.
I actually do have
GPP.
Nate Diaz on a GPP.
On a GPP, but for cash games, just stay away from this fight?
Yeah, because cash game, you want someone who's safe. Neither of these guys are safe.
Well,
They're not safe picks.
Give me a safe guy then.
Okay, you want to go safe guy? You got to go Hyun Lim. Hyun Lim, $11,100.
That's pricey.
He's very pricey, but I actually played him on both because, listen, Platinum Mike Perry, his opponent, coming on in like 2 weeks' notice, right? He's from, I think, UFC gym Florida, like Winter Springs, Florida. So he's training at a UFC gym. His top training partner, like Alex Nicholson, way too big for him. So they're obviously not really trained together. And it's just kind of like he's a 7-0 mid-pack guy on the regional scene, likes to go out there, likes to throw hands, likes to knock the guy out, does have good power. He's undefeated, right? So I go and I look back into his fights, and so he's got not a trilogy match. He's fought this one guy twice, right? And he fought this guy as an amateur, which is only 2 years ago. It just sounded like a long time ago as an amateur, but he fought this guy as an amateur, and he got like basically knocked out twice in the fight. Only fight never really stopped. Round ended at one point, and the other one, he took like a secondary shot that kind of woke him back up. So I don't think his chin's, granted. When the guy's undefeated, you know me. If you've never been knocked out before, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. This guy didn't get knocked out, but he certainly got wobbled. Then I found out he's actually 0-1 as a pro boxer, and that fight was like last year, and he gets knocked out, right? So you can knock this guy out. Hyun Lim, they now call him the Ace. He's a big dude. Big, powerful Korean guy, goes in there, throws hands, has been known to get those stoppage victories, has gone 5 rounds in a fight with Tarek Saffiedine in a card that he actually headlined. So he's been in a headlining spot for the UFC before. He's a guy that's got 5-6 fights under the UFC banner. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's fighting a short notice replacement. And his problem is he doesn't like people taking him down. This guy's not going to try to take him down. Mike Perry's not going to try to take him down. He'll more than likely, he might try, but it won't work. He's more than likely going to stand in front of him. And because I'm a little bit worried about his ability to take a punch, I think Hyun Lim hits him and puts him down. Even if he doesn't put him down, I think he's safe in the regard that it'll go 3 and he's going to get some
pile
points.
Up strikes.
Yeah, and someone's going to tell me, well, for 11-1, you got to get the finish. Yeah, on my GPP, need that finish. But for my cash game, I don't really care. If he goes out there and gets me 70 points, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, if all your players get you 70 points, you're going to win your cash game.
Yeah, and I have a feeling he's going to get a finish. That's why I decided to play him on both. Is it a little bit risky? Everything's a little bit risky. Do I like the price at 11-1? Not necessarily. But this is one of those few cards that you can get 3 guys that are below 10 grand that you like. And because of that, you can afford whatever you want. I at one point had a team that had like 3 grand on the table. I decided to...
That would be an ultimate GPP team because no one else is going to have that roster.
No, it was
unless we tell
team.
everyone and everyone just kind of copies it. I played in a cash game like last week.
Playing against yourself.
I played against myself. It was an 11-man cash game, so the top 5 spots win, and the top 5 spots that won were all the same lineup.
Yeah. Listen, it happens. People always accuse me too, like, you're not using these lineups because you know everybody else is going to take these lineups. You're going to come through with something else. But this is actually what I think to be the best lineup, right? Like, that doesn't mean you're not going to play different lineups, and I appreciate the people that'll be like, I like this guy, but I don't like this guy.
Yeah,
what do you
mix
think
and match. Take
mix
your
and
template
match.
and like, I don't like Nate Diaz. I think a lot of people are going to own Nate Diaz. I'll swap him out for someone who's $9,100 and I like
fair.
more.
Very fair.
That's actually a very smart way to do it.
Yeah.
To differentiate your team just that little bit. So you talk about 3 guys underneath $10,000 that like you feel okay about. Who's one?
Okay, definitely going to start off with, Nate Diaz, he's under 10,000, 9,200, I like him, but Lorenz Larkin, $8,900. Lorenz Larkin is a very, very dynamic striker.
But he's taking on your boy Neil Magny.
And Neil Magny, and this is, I feel bad saying this, Neil Magny is 100% not the guy to underestimate. And this is a spot where we need to underestimate him because Neil Magny, he goes out there and he gets the wins. Are they the most spectacular wins? They're big wins, but he's always having moments in these fights where it's like, he's not a world beater. He's not smoking the best guys. The Hector Lombard fight, he's a hair away from himself getting knocked out in the first round. The fight prior to that against Kelvin Gastelum, he got dropped twice in that fight with punches. The fight prior to that, Eric Silva, was a split decision over Eric Silva. Fight before that, he got choked out by Damian Maia pretty much effortlessly. And then you got a 7-fight winning streak before that, which puts him at like 10-1 in his last 11 fights. Very impressive. But he's taking guys out that he can be like, you know what, I'm Neil Magny, people are underestimating me, they don't really think I have a chance. I can go out there, I work hard, I've got good grappling skills, I can put it to use, and I can, if you're a better grappler than me, I can use my striking to open up on you. If you're a better striker than me, I can use my grappling. These guys that are really good in one domain, they're the guys that's going to beat him. When I look at this spot against Lorenz Larkin is really good in one domain, that being his striking game. He's much better striker than Neil Magny. He's a lot faster, he's got better hand speed, his foot movement is way better, he cuts angles, he is a power puncher, and Neil Magny's a tall, skinny guy that kind of stays outright. He likes to pump his jab, but if he gets countered off one of those jabs, he's going to get hit. Now, Lorenz Larkin's really lackadaisical, he kind of like a George Masvidal. He's so talented, he could just go out there and finish you, presumably, but sometimes he just gets caught and dancing around. But because he's lost a couple fights doing that, I feel like he's going to reinvent himself a little bit. Magny's going to try to get the fight to the ground. Larkin knows that. If he can keep this fight standing, he's going to hurt he's going to hurt Neil Magny. And I think that's the path of victory here. Keep the fight standing and just hit this guy, hurt him. Kelvin Gastelum, rewatch the fight. It's a couple shots that Magny doesn't really see coming. They hit him, they put him down. I think Larkin's a better striker than Kelvin Gastelum. And as long as he can keep this fight standing, which I know he's working hard to do, I think he's a good spot.
Every time that Anthony Johnson is on a card, he ends up on the cash team. Every single time. And he is 10,700 this time against Glover Texeira. Again, Were we rolling out Anthony Johnson?
Well, Anthony Johnson, it's a somewhat tough spot in that they're two big guys at light heavyweight, 205 pounds, who are definitely going to just go stand in front of each other. Well, that's a lie. Glover Texeira knows how good Anthony Johnson is. He's going to probably try to take this fight to the ground. But Anthony Johnson is Anthony Johnson. If you do decide to stand with him, he's going to hurt you bad. And if you take him to the ground, that's definitely his kryptonite. But you got to be an elite level guy to get him to the ground. Glover's an elite level guy, but not necessarily in the grappling credentials. He's taken down some good guys, don't get me wrong, but he's not taking down Anthony Johnson. Every time Anthony Johnson loses, he comes back that much better. It's true. So him losing against Daniel Cormier, it seems like it's been better for him, right? He's on a roll here. I like what I see out of him. I think he's more athletic. He's the bigger guy. He's a stronger guy. The one thing he's got to worry about is sometimes when you get into this like kill mode, like I'm going to knock this guy out, then you're going to leave out these openings. And if there's an opening there, Glover's going to take him down. Now, Glover's got a cast iron chin as well. One of these guys that doesn't necessarily ever get knocked out, so it's hard to bank against him getting knocked out. However, in his fight with Ryan Bader, he was in all sorts of trouble against Ryan Bader, who's certainly not on the level of one Anthony Johnson. So the guy's getting older now. He's coming into this fight, I'm not going to say the greatest shape of his career, but it's in good shape. But I think Anthony Johnson gets to him, and I think he puts him down. So, yeah, I would like Anthony Johnson on my cash game team. And then, once again, with GPP, I probably would have avoided him on a cash game team if I wasn't able to save so much money. But you're able to save so much money that, truthfully, it was like, okay, I'm just going to put him on both.
All right, so from like either the undercard or a big underdog, what are we looking at for a quick finish, if there is one?
Yeah, so this Marvin Vettori, right? He's an Italian fighter making his UFC debut. He's 22 years old, and he trains at a King's MMA, which is a very famed gym in California, Huntington Beach, California. So he no doubt has the training partners around him, and he's definitely getting better. The guy fought in Italy for Vettori FC, a good Italian promotion, last number of fights, and he's been fighting good level competition, and he's been beating them. So he fought a guy that I'm a big fan of, Jack the Stone Mason, and he smoked Jack Mason, kneed him in the face, and knocked him out like a minute in. Jack Mason's got 40 pro fights and is like a hair under UFC caliber, but it was still a good win. Then he fights Igor Arroyo, who had fought in the UFC previously, and he chokes this guy out with a guillotine minute and a half in, hurts him with a knee to the body, and then chokes him out with the guillotine. Igor Arroyo's a black belt. That was his only thing. This kid proved to be good. 22 years old, he's proved to be good. If he's got the cardio to go out there and put it on Alberto Uda, just get out of the first round. I think he puts him away. Uda showed in his debut, and yeah, he took it on relatively short notice. He gassed huge, man, like huge. Like 2 minutes in, he's got this guy's nose broken. He's got this guy hurt, and he can't capitalize. He's just too tired. He's got a black belt, but he's so tired, he can't really use it. Like, the fight almost starts to become like real sad for him. It's like, oh, geez, this guy's out of gas. Second round starts. Now octagon jitters have settled in. Adrenaline dump settled in. The fact that he took the fight on a week's notice settled in. And Jake Collier, who's in a little better shape, goes out there and knocks him out. Jake Collier goes out there and knocks him out. Jake Collier's a pretty low-level tier guy in the UFC, you know. So I think this spot for Vettori, he can do the same thing. He can go out there. He's a better wrestler, right? So try to put this guy on his back. He's a brilliant jiu-jitsu black belt. Yeah, but he's proved that other than throwing up triangles and arm bars, he's really not that good at scrambling. His sweeps aren't really that good. Put him on his back. You don't want to put him on his back? Okay, he's a Muay Thai guy. He's going to try to clench you. He's going to try to knee you. But what after that? What after the first round? Then all of a sudden he's tired, and then he tries to just cling on to you, and you punch him right in the face. So Uda has a shot to win. Don't get me wrong. But for $8,800, Marvin Vettori, I have to go with that.
And you threw him on your cash game, too.
I didn't want to necessarily, but I don't mind when my cash game team and my GPP teams are relatively the same. And once
the cash game team usually wins.
Yeah,
so and the GPP one doesn't. So
I know.
Very clearly, the cash game team is better.
Well, I liked him on GPP because, quite frankly, I think he gets the finish, right? And for $8,800, I want to take that chance. I like the spot. I think I'm going to put him on my GPP team. Then I think about the cash game team. When I look at some of the prices, it's like, well, geez, you know what? I like Hyun Lim, and I like Anthony Johnson. And I like a guy like Donald Cerrone. So I need some cheaper guys. And when I look back at the cheaper guys, there's a number of them that I like. But Vettori's certainly right up there. So I decided to play him on both.
So you like Cerrone? Even at $10,000, it doesn't seem like he is as big of a favorite as maybe his DraftKings odds would suggest. Like, he's $10,000, and the betting odds, he's minus 170. So his DraftKings pricing is much more fair than, let's say, McGregor's, who's a minus 125 favorite. This guy's a bigger favorite and comes in less expensive.
Yeah, you know what? I really found this time around. It'd be interesting in seeing how they draw up the conclusions on these lines because some of them don't make sense. And in fact, that last fight...
I think it's because the pricing came out so early.
Well, look at that last fight that we talked about, Vettori versus Uda, right? What's the betting line on that?
Vettori's the favorite, minus 163.
Minus 163 for Vettori.
And he is
Look at the DraftKings prices.
Yeah, he's $8,800.
What's Uda?
Uda is plus 138 and 10-6.
He's 10-6, Pat. He's more expensive than Conor McGregor, and he's the underdog.
I don't know.
Because he's a finisher. But still, you look at his last fight. He's crap. It's garbage. No good. It was a terrible performance. The guy's 10,600, and he's the underdog. Why that is, I don't know. However, that being said, gotta knock on some wood here, because some idiot's gonna play that guy, and he's gonna knock the guy out in the first round, and I'm gonna be like, ugh. But that's just the way it goes sometimes, right?
Why Cerrone, though? He's on your cash team.
I learned my lesson last time against Cerrone. I had Patrick Cote. I thought, geez, I like Donald Cerrone, but he can't be moving up to welterweight and fighting these big, tough, rugged guys. They're just going to go in there and they're going to break him. He's a breakable guy. They're going to break him. And wow, man, was I ever wrong. He looked fantastic against Patrick Cote. When I look at Rick Story, I see a lot of similarities to Patrick Cote. Certainly a better wrestler and, better pretty much all around. But he's going to try to plod forward. He's going to try to corner off Cerrone, and he's going to try to land shots. But Cerrone's he's the better technical striker. His wrestling seems to be better. If the fight does hit the ground, he's better on the ground. If he manages to get the fight to the ground, he could choke out Rick Story. I just really was very, very thoroughly impressed with his performance against Patrick Cote. And when I see him come in here against Rick Story, I think it's a similar spot.
Do you think you are suffering from recency bias on this?
And you know what? It's that Donald Cerrone, when he loses, and the guy does lose, he gets killed. But when you look at some of those guys that are killing him, they're the best guys in the world. Anthony Pettis at the time, when he would then go on to be the champion, right? When he loses to Rafael dos Anjos both times, well, Rafael dos Anjos ended up being the champion. So because he's never been the champion, and you only really remember him losing in these big spots, it's like, always a bridesmaid, never a bride, Donald Cerrone. So now he's going to 170, and you remember it as like the guy that couldn't even win at 155. He knows he can't get a title shot at 155 anymore. He's already challenged twice, and he failed both times. So he's going to go to 170 and flatter some fights there. But I couldn't be any more wrong. You know what I mean? He's losing to the best guys. When he fights guys that are top 5, top 10, he murders them. And Pat Cote at best is a top 15 guy, and then you saw the results. Rick Story's a tough dude, but Rick Story's a top 15, top 10 guy. These are the spots that he happens to shine in. I think I learned my lesson last time. It's like, unless he's fighting a number 1 contender or the champion, he's going to look good. And against Rick Story, a guy that Rick Story had a recently FDA-approved neck surgery because his neck's donezo, done. Going to retire, can't feel tingling sensations in his right hand. He's done. Now he gets this brand new surgery. They put a plastic disc in his neck, and he says he hasn't felt as good since junior high. Maybe that's true, but maybe that's not true. And I guy with a bad neck against the Cowboy, geez, I really got to think Cerrone.
Before we get to the lineups here, only because I want to talk about it, so A-Rap has to change the board because there was a spelling mistake in it. But you mentioned it, we were just talking before we came in. Tim Means versus Sabah Homasi. No H.
Sabah Homasi.
So
Sabah ranks.
But there's an H on my sheet.
I don't know why I saw that.
Right.
Habashi.
Trying to make me look bad, A-Rap. How dare you? How dare you?
I know. It's
but you said
American
he's only $8,500. Do you think he could win potentially?
I very much think he can win.
So he could be a GPP play.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the team that I had $3,000 on the table, Sabah was on it. And then when I look back at it, I was like, man, I have so much money. Why not take Hyun Lim and Anthony Johnson again?
But let me ask you this. If you want to do two things, and one of the best ways to differentiate your GPP lineups to make sure that no one else has the lineup is A, leave money on the table. Now, you were leaving a lot of money on the table.
Yeah,
probably too much money on the table. But when I look at your GPP lineup, let's actually get into that right now. You have Nate Diaz on it at $9,200. What if you were to drop Diaz and throw this guy on?
Yeah, definitely. I like Diaz in the GPP spot just because what we've seen in the first fight. But 100% because if
he's
Diaz
going
is
to be popular.
Exactly. If he's very owned and everybody wants to own, people might be looking at that and be like, I think McGregor's going to win. But for $9,200, I'm going to roll the dice. It'll sway their mind, so to speak. So, yeah, I don't mind hopping off on that for sure. And Sabah Homasi, guy that was on The Ultimate Fighter, never got into the UFC. Trains at American Top Team, good gym, very tough guy. Goes on to the regional scene. It's like, is Sabah Homasi all that good? His problem is his wrestlers. These wrestlers, they go out there and they try to take him down. They try to grind him. Then he signs with Titan FC. Titan FC is a very good regional promotion.
Like the AHL? Is it below Bellator?
Yeah, but ever so slightly.
Okay.
It's not leaps and bounds below Bellator, but it is below Bellator. They're shown on Fight Pass. So what UFC likes to do is showcase these guys on Fight Pass. If they do good, if they look good, hey, then why not call these guys over? And they just got a little bit of exposure on Fight Pass. We'll put them on a UFC card. Sabah Homasi gets a good spot against my boy, George Patino, Macaco. Macaco is as durable as they come. And I was shocked. I thought Sabah Homasi would win because Macaco's 44 years old. But holy, Homasi is big. He's a big dude. And he just marches forward and throws nothing but heat. Nothing but heat. Nothing but heat. He kicks the crap out of my boy Makako in the first round. Knocks Makako clean out with a knee to the face in the second round. And I was thinking to myself, no wonder everyone's always trying to take this guy down. Why would you want to stand with him? What? Totally makes sense. Now he comes into this spot on short notice, right? And he actually only fought Makako 2 weeks ago. So I'm expecting to see a very similar version of him that night. If he doesn't have to do any USADA testing, for example, right? Because he's coming on short notice. Everybody else has to go 4-month testing pool. So who knows? But he's looking in fantastic shape. He's a big boy, and he's throwing heat. Tim Means, speaking of USADA, this guy's coming off a year-long suspension because he failed with USADA. So he's going to be clean. He's back in that 4-month testing pool. And, he says it wasn't his fault. And I actually do believe him. If you've seen the guy, he's rather scrawny. I don't know why he'd be testing. But I know the stuff he was taking, and it's some legit steroids, man. Like, nobody accidentally slipped that in your drink, you know what I mean? Like, you knew 100% what you were getting yourself into. So, it's going to be a good fight. Now, Tim Means is a striker. That's what he likes to do.
He's not going to take him down?
The last time he tried to take a guy down, he was hurting the guy standing. Then the guy was like, I'm a tough dude, Matt Brown. I'm going to hurt you back. He hurt him back, and that caused Tim Means to be like, oh, man, I don't like that. So he shot a takedown. In shooting the takedown, he just got choked in a guillotine choke. He was kind of out. Look at some of the fights he's lost in the UFC against wrestlers. So when he's losing, it's guys taking him down too, and he prefers to stand. When Homasi's losing, guys taking him down, and he prefers to stand. Now you got a spot where you got Tim Means, a guy he's actually fought as low as 155 in his career. Taking on Sabah Homasi, who was gigantic when I saw him 2 weeks ago. Geez, you know what? The guy's signed to the UFC on a week's notice. He didn't win the Ultimate Fighter. The UFC didn't. He's actually got not a whole lot of pressure on his back. If I win, I'm a plus 450 underdog. Well, plus 400
Plus 300 now.
Okay, yeah. So Tim Means is a minus 400. Minus 400. I'm a big underdog. So if I go out there and I lose to Tim Means, who gives a crap? I'm getting another fight out of this anyways. I just signed a UFC contract. I'm in the UFC. If you're Tim Means, I'm getting a guy here who I'm a gigantic favorite on. I don't really know a whole lot about him. He's taking the fight on short notice. And I feel like I got to prove something because I'm coming off a 12-month suspension. So pressure's on Tim Means, and I think pressure's off Sabah Homasi. So if he can just go out there, he didn't take any damage against Makako, and he was in a training camp for Makako. So even though it sounds like he's taking the fight on short notice, is he taking the fight on short notice? Because he just completed an 8-week training camp, right? So he's going to be in good shape. He's not going to be one of those typical spots where guy on short notice is going to gas out. Sabah should look good. And he's so big, maybe it's like, oh, geez, maybe he will gas out. Well, he knocked out Makako in the second round, and he was looking pretty good up to that point. So some people will say, dude, he was 44 years old, man. You're just a mark. Stop talking about him like he's a legend. The guy is a legend, right? So
let's get to the teams.
Okay.
Cash team. Let's reel it off.
Yeah, cash game. I like Hyun Lim, $11,100. Same thing. Mike Perry's a short-nosed guy who probably will get tired. And I think he's just chin's a little more suspect than his undefeated record might suggest. So we're going to go with Hyun Lim. Anthony Johnson, Rumble, $10,700. As you said, whenever this guy fights, you want a piece of him because he always seems to put up good scores, good numbers.
He does. He puts up big DraftKings points.
This seems to be a favorable matchup for him in that Anthony Johnson could beat all the guys that are not the top two guys.
He's not very. So not John Jones and Daniel Cormier.
Those are the guys that can beat him. Everybody else, he goes out there and it's just like, whoa, nobody does that to Nogueira. Whoa, nobody does that to Alexander Gustafsson. Alexander Gustafsson arguably won. I don't think so, but in a lot of people's opinions, arguably beat Jones and Cormier. And he lasted about one round against Anthony Johnson. So, yes, I do like him. I like him very much. Donald Cerrone, $10,000. I learned my lesson on Donald Cerrone. Thing is, don't put him on GPP. Even though I think he goes out there and beats Rick Story, his only path to getting the finish, I think, would be the submission if Rick Story's to try to take him down and he just gets something, or if he's to get a takedown of his own. But I have a feeling this one goes 15 minutes. Donald Cerrone chews him up. So I like him on cash game team. Raquel Pennington, $9,200. Oh, baby. $9,200, I like that very much so. It's nothing against Elizabeth Phillips. It's just I really like the money here.
Well, this seems to be another one, and we mentioned the big one earlier, but the discrepancy between odds and DraftKings pricing. Pennington's a minus 250 favorite, $9,200.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You got to go with it. I honestly,
she's going to be popular in GPPs, for sure.
Well, I don't think she gets a finish, so I don't want her.
But she will be popular just because of the pricing difference.
Yeah, then absolutely, by all means. First of all, I don't actually like the minus 250 on her. I think that's a little bit skewed. Elizabeth Phillips, not great, but she's coming off a win, and she's a serviceable fighter, and she trains with Juliana Pena over at Sick Jitsu. So I think she's going to be a very talented enough girl to be able to at least give her some trouble. But when you talk about Raquel Pennington, you talk about a girl who's fought already the best girls in the division. She's fought Holly Holm. She's fought, Jessica Andrade. She's fought good girls in the division already. And then she's just proven that she's a very tough girl, very tough. Her record might not suggest it because it's not exactly a great record.
7-6.
7-6, not a great record. That being said, she's a very tough girl, and she's learning on the job. And being that now she's not in her first fight in the UFC, she's in her 4th, 5th fight in the UFC, she has definitely learned a lot on the job. Elizabeth Phillips kind of gaps herself out a little bit. She's not the most active person. I think she's had something like 3 fights in 3 years. So I like the spot for Pennington. Do I think Pennington gets the finish? No, not really.
But
I
at
think
$9,200, win by decision, pile up some significant strikes. You got yourself 75 points. You're good to go.
That's a cash game dream as far as I'm concerned. And then moving on, we got Marvin Vettori. Yeah, that's just going to round out the team. I leave $200 on the table. Marvin's a guy that the first round might be sticky, not going to lie. Uda, certainly for 5 minutes, is going to be trying to knee him in the head. He does have a good Muay Thai background. He likes to clinch up. However, once it gets into the second round, in the third round, I think that's when this 22-year-old kid's going to shine. 32-year-old Uda, not going to get any more polished than he is now. And the gym he trains out of is a Muay Thai gym. They're known for producing Muay Thai fighters. And this is a spot against a kid in Vettori who is good on the ground. He's going to try to take him down. He's going to try to pound him. So I don't mind him whatsoever. And then, yeah, like I said, leaving $200 on the table.
And Vettori shows up on your GPP team, too.
GPP, he shows up on both. I didn't want to get all in on him and have him on both of my teams. So if I was to make other teams, maybe I would take him off just because you never like to be all in on a guy.
Yeah, but you can...
But for $8,800, I feel like it's a very, very smart play.
Yeah, and you can make different variations of this GPP lineup, too, even if you wanted, instead of just entering one GPP lineup. I always enter the cash game lineup into GPPs anyway.
It does better.
I don't want to have an awesome team in cash and not have it in
GPPs
I know. Where you can make the big money. But like even taking this, usually what I do with your lineups after talking to you is take your base lineup, enter that, and then I'll make a few variations off of it. Like you mentioned, like I would take off Nate Diaz in one of these spots, throw someone else on for the price, maybe leave a bit of money off the table, maybe swap up a high-end guy or two, and just have the same core of players, but give myself a few more outs and try to hit on some of these quick finishes because they happen. You just never know when it's going to happen.
That's exactly it. And you know what? We speak about it all the time when you're looking at some of these GPPs. It's like you always seem to go like a 4 out of 5. There's always one person that scores 7 points and he's no good. Well, why not try switching them out? And if you don't end up with that guy, then you're good. But that's why it's a difficult game and one that's fun at the same time. But
so let's list it off. What is it?
We're going with GPP now. We got Hyun Lim, 11,100. Same thing. Anthony Johnson, 10,700. Nate Diaz, $9,200. Nate Diaz has proven that I can finish this guy. And when you look at Conor McGregor, he's got 3 career losses, and they're all by submission. And how much better did he get at jiu-jitsu in the time since his last fight? Maybe a little bit better, but not in leap and bounds better. If the fight hits the ground, you have to assume Nate Diaz is going to put it on him. If the fight stays standing, Nate Diaz has already proven he can take those shots. So $9,200, I like it.
And like I mentioned, he's likely to be one of the highest owned players in these giant tournaments. So if you do want to move off of him onto a player of a similar price or even a bit down, it's not the craziest move in the world just to make your team a little bit different. And if Diaz doesn't win or it ends up going to decision, they both score like 50 points, you can capitalize somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the other thing, too. I mean, the last time I saw this fight going down, I saw Nate Diaz getting knocked out, right? So who's to say he doesn't get knocked out this time? There's certainly a possibility. It's just, because you've been able to see the fight once around.
That's what you see in your mind.
Yeah, and it's not like the fight, like we see rematches all the time and they're like, these guys are completely different. It's like, these guys are not really completely different. I mean, when the fight was in, March? So I'm sure they've learned a couple things along the way. The fight wasn't at UFC 200, which would have been a really quick turnaround when you think about it. But nonetheless, it's not like anybody's reinvented themselves. So if you're getting similar versions of both guys, well, then, you would have to assume that Nate Diaz is probably the better guy. But that's just an assumption. Assumptions get you a lot in trouble here. So we're going to go with Nate Diaz on the GPP, but I do feel not playing him and just letting everybody else have a piece of that in case it blows up in their face. I'm not on that boat. But we got Lorenz Larkin, $8,900. Lorenz Larkin, as I mentioned, he's in a tough spot because Neil Magny is a tough guy, and you can't underestimate Neil Magny. However, we've seen Lorenz Larkin do some fantastic stuff, and people love Santiago Ponzinibbio now. Ponzinibbio, the Pons. People love the guy. Yeah.
Well, it's a Ponzi scheme?
Look at Larkin versus the Pons. I mean, Ponzinibbio is trying to throw heat, and Larkin's just got this ability. His hands are so fast. This guy used to fight at heavyweight. Then he dropped down to light heavyweight. Then he dropped down to middleweight. And now he fights at welterweight. And he's so fast, it's ridiculous. But I like him. And because he's coming off a couple, not great performances. Not that they're not great. He's fighting tough guys. They're just
better.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's easy to say, well, maybe Larkin's not what I thought he would be. I think he is. I really do think he is. And I think that this is a good spot for him to go out there on a big card and showcase that. And then moving on, as you mentioned, we got both teams, Marvin Vettori. So coming out of Italy, they've proven Italians, there are not a whole lot of them in the UFC. Alessio Sakara, that was their flag bearer for a long time. He's cut back to Venator and Bellator for a little bit. But, I mean, they're looking like they're starting to produce a couple decent guys, and Vettori's definitely one of those front runners. 22 years old. If he was just living and training out of Italy, I'd have some concerns. But he's done his last 2 camps in California with a very, very, very good gym. So I think he's going to make enough improvements to get that win over Uda.
Cody Saftik. Check him out on Twitter at CJ Saftik. And when do you expect the Bookie Beatdown to be up this week?
Well, we're having our 100th episode of Bookie Beatdown.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you very much. So we'll be shooting that on Monday, and then I like to take a time.
Wednesday morning? Tuesday night?
Yeah, well, the audio version will be up right away.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be up
People
Monday
like
night.
the effort that you guys put into the video version is well worth it, but it takes time.
It takes time. That's
people may not realize, but
No,
it takes
they
a
don't.
lot of time.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that like people are like, oh, somebody else is doing it. Like, oh, you got director Chase or director.
No.
It's like, no, man, I'm cutting the video. Paul's cutting the video. We're making these boards. We're putting in the time. So it's a labor of love. But yeah, you could check it probably. I'm gonna say Wednesday night, but as a rule of thumb, Thursday morning is when the episode typically comes out for the video one. And we're shooting early this week. We're going to put a lot of viz on it, make it special, so should be a good one.
Yeah, you can use this as a tune-up before you guys really dig into it.
That's right.
There, now usually we do it the other way around, where you do Bookie Beatdown first, then come on here, and you're usually primed to go. Now you're going to have like the best performance ever on the Bookie Beatdown.
See, I'm not going to lie. The problem is because it takes so long to edit, you got to get, and the odds never really get released all that earlier in the week. It's not like you got them 2 weeks ago. They kind of get dropped. This is a big card, and there was no UFC last week, so it happens. However, I like doing it with you on the Wednesday because on the Monday, you might not have all that time to research these
But
guys.
you've already talked about it too.
Yeah, you've talked about
Now
it.
you get the second time around.
And you get Paul's perspective as well, which makes you think for a lot of the time, like, oh, you know what? He actually has a great point, right? So that makes you think. Then the Tuesday, then you watch more material, then you watch more fights. Then the Wednesday, you read more stuff and you watch. You know, sometimes these picks change by Friday, but I do like them. And you can always hit me at Twitter at CJ Saftik to see if I've changed my mind, or what do I think of a certain guy later on in the week, especially after weigh-ins when you get a better idea of what kind of physical shape they're in.
Cool. All right. That'll do it on the Pat Mayo Hour. Remember to subscribe to the Pat Mayo Hour on YouTube and iTunes, and check out the complete 2016 Fantasy Football Draft Guide up. Full listings on my Facebook page right now, facebook.com/thepme. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
For the latest expert fantasy sports strategy and tips on YouTube, click subscribe. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and call your local cable TV provider to order Fantasy Sports Network, or watch us on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Xbox.